Darling, don't lose me. I have an important meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. The conference is set for 9:30. I hope you can make it. Try not to be late. The client will be there. If we can negotiate with him, we could make a lot of money. Jessica sighed and rolled her eyes with disapproval at her husband. It was always like this. They worked together, yet all the household responsibilities gradually shifted onto her fragile shoulders. Of course, Alex had his share of responsibilities, but male matters are such that they can always be postponed, deferred indefinitely. Go already, the head of the family. Soon you'll forget what your daughter looks like. I'll wake up Valerie now, feed her, take her to school. Then I have a manicure appointment. Hopefully, I'll be at my desk sharp at 9:30. If I happen to be late, don't start without me. Jessica quickly reported to her husband, habitually pecking him on the cheek. Alex hurriedly opened the door, playfully waved to her, and quickly disappeared. Finally, their window sales and installation company, which they had organized a few years ago, began to bear fruit. The business into which they had invested a lot of effort and resources was starting to pay off. The main thing was that they became known, and orders started coming in. They breathed a sigh of relief, allowing themselves occasional vacations abroad. On rare weekends, they could indulge in family shopping, spending the whole day browsing through stores, with breaks at cafes or restaurants, and returning home only by evening. The main credit for their peaceful and happy life undoubtedly went to Alex. He practically lived in the office, sometimes coming home only to spend the night. And in the morning, before dawn, he would rush off to his beloved work. Okay, Diana, thank you. I'll come to the office with well-groomed hands now, Jessica said with pleasure, admiring her manicure. She believed it was not only an integral part of the female image, but also an excellent way to lift her spirits. Jessica quickly rose from the table, took out her card, paid at the reception, wished everyone a successful day, glanced at her watch, and realized time was pressing. On the go, she pulled out her keys, opened the car, sat in the driver's seat, and headed to work. Jessica's driving experience was not very impressive. They bought a car out of sheer necessity. When their daughter started first grade, Alex no longer had time to drive her to school and various extracurricular activities. It consumed a lot of time. At a family meeting, they decided to send Mom to driving school. After Jessica got her driver's license, they bought an inexpensive car for her to hone her skills. So, when Jessica forcefully pressed the brake pedal, hearing the sound of a dull impact, she closed her eyes in fear, feeling complete disappointment for once again not living up to the expectations placed on her. Counting to 10, Jessica opened her eyes. Her heart was pounding so hard it seemed to rattle the slightly open window in the car. She tightly gripped the steering wheel, carefully staring at the windshield. She opened and then closed her eyes again. Nothing changed. She got out of the car, just in case, checked the license plate. It was Alex's car. Alex's plates. Such coincidences happen. Miss, forgive me. It's my fault. I was cut off. The girl apologized, running around the car and inspecting a small dent. I've already called my boyfriend. He'll be here soon. It's not my car. He'll cover the repair cost for you. You can trust me. She continued, pleadingly looking at Jessica. Hearing an incoming call, she stepped aside, covered the phone with her hand, attentively listening to her interlocutor's instructions. The girl seems not to be a troublemaker. I'll try to settle it. Don't worry, love, I'll do everything as you said. Our damages are minor. Love you and wait. She looked at the darkened screen of her phone, guiltily smiling at Jessica, who was already dialing the police. Good morning. I would like to report an accident. Yes, a collision. The girl's eyebrows raised in surprise. Confusion appeared on her face. I'm not even on the insurance. Miss, I asked you not to involve the police. I think we can come to an agreement. She complained. unfriendly glancing at Jessica. Without saying a word, Jessica turned around, opened the door, sat in the driver's seat, deciding not to inform anyone and wait for someone to explain this confusing and absurd situation to her. 15 minutes passed. Jessica was already late. The collision happened not far from the office. If Alex had noticed, he would have already called her and asked where she was. Until today, that was always the case. "Darling, you finally arrived." A fawning voice reached Jessica. "I was in a hurry. I was late for an appointment." And then a car popped up. She continued to chatter. Jessica got out of the car and leaned on the hood, continuing to observe as Alex, ignoring everyone around, comforted his lover. He tenderly held her to his chest, stroking her head. Then he casually inspected his car. "Everything's fine. Don't worry," he said affectionately. Upon hearing his words, the girl buried her face in his chest. "Forgive me, Alex. I forgive you." He finally turned around. Her heart stopped. Jessica hoped that maybe it was a random coincidence, a misunderstanding, a mistake. Alex could have lent his car to a friend or his wife. After all, life presents all kinds of situations. Watching from the sidelines as a completely unfamiliar woman hugged and kissed her husband, calling him beloved as if she had every right to, was unbearable. Jessica bitterly smiled when she saw the change in Alex's face. It instantly paled. The smile disappeared as he realized the gravity of the situation. "Hello, dear. Looks like you were in a hurry for an important meeting today. I hope everything went well for you." She handed him the keys to her car. Alex opened his mouth, as if a fish started greedily inhaling air, trying to gather his thoughts and say something. But apparently, he couldn't find the right words. Silently, he took the keys. "Stay here. I'll go to the meeting. This time, we'll manage without you. And you wait for the police. If you need me, you'll call. Although your girl said that you'll handle everything yourself. Take my car to the auto repair shop. Try to fix your lover's mistakes as soon as possible." Jessica called a taxi, opened the front door of her car, and took out her purse. "Jessica," she finally heard, slightly startled that her husband's voice seemed completely unfamiliar. She didn't even notice when he managed to approach her. He took her elbow, pulled, tried to turn her face towards him, but she forcefully pulled her elbow out of his grip. Turned around. "Miss, why did you suddenly go silent? You've managed to tell me so much about your beloved boyfriend, and now you are standing here calmly watching as he gropes another woman right before your eyes. Interesting love you have." Alex turned his head, looked at his lover with anger and disdain. Their eyes met. She had already opened her mouth, trying to interject, but seeing his displeased face, she didn't even dare to utter a word. Bowed her head. She remained silent and genuinely watched this fateful encounter. "Why are you silent?" Jessica prodded, trying to start a conversation. "I didn't know. I didn't think." The girl began to justify herself, shrugging her shoulders, not knowing how to behave to avoid provoking more conflict. "And if you knew and thought, would you still have slept with someone else's husband? Why on earth is some unfamiliar girl sprawled on our car? Maybe she's already tried our beds." Jessica addressed her husband. "Enough talking nonsense. Let's wait for the police. Then we'll go to work together. We'll reschedule the meeting for tomorrow." He took out his phone. "No one will reschedule anything for tomorrow. You're not the sole founder of our company. I can also make decisions, and you know it well. I advise you not to anger me." Jessica approached the taxi that arrived at the accident site. She opened the door and sat in the back seat. "Jessica, I'm asking you, don't do anything foolish. Promise me that you'll wait for me, and we'll talk calmly." Alex held the door, trying to persuade her and appeal to reason. "I can't promise anything. Let's go, young man. I'm running late." She addressed the taxi driver, closing the door. Alex frowned, stepped away from the car. Putting his hands in his pockets, He looked around as if searching for a spy who was relentlessly watching him. Finally, he noticed his wife's damaged car. After paying the driver, Jessica got out of the car. She stood on the street for a moment, trying to compose herself, and then confidently walked into the office. "Hello, David. Sorry for the delay. Come into my office." Approaching the office, Jessica called the chief accountant. She asked her to, at all costs, delay the client. Inviting him into her office, Jessica understood perfectly well that nothing good would come out of this conversation, but she decided to at least try. Moreover, David didn't go anywhere and was peacefully chatting with the accountant, sprawled on a chair. "And where is your husband? I understand that all decisions are made only with his consent," David said after some contemplation. "David, I won't deceive you. In general, I want to separate from my husband, take my 50% and soon open my own firm. So Alex may not be able to handle your order." She said everything that was on her mind. "Decided to revenge your husband. Why did you tell me this?" David said after some thought. "I don't want him to get this order. Consider it my revenge." Jessica turned away from the window, trying to cope with her excitement and, at the same time, with the fact that for the first time in her life, she was acting not entirely decently. "I love honest people. Do you want me to make a deal with you?" David clearly liked this woman. There was something special about her. "I do. Your order could solve many of my problems. Divorce, property division. My head is spinning." Jessica raised her chin to hide her vulnerability, smiled, and then laughed more and more, recalling the incident that happened to her on the road. "If we come to an agreement, we might start cooperating. Why not? I have a feeling that we'll find common ground. I'll call you in 3 days. We'll meet, discuss all the details." David stood up, looking at Jessica with an interested gaze. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude for the much-needed friendly support. "Thank you," she said, stopping her laughter, barely holding back from bursting into tears. "I'll call you," he said and left the office. Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes. She fell onto the table and burst into tears, but she recovered quickly. Remembering her recent conversation with the client, she decided that all was not lost. If she could indeed secure this order, Alex would deeply regret his dishonest actions. She was willing to do whatever it took to collaborate with David, even if it meant agreeing to all his conditions just to keep the order away from her husband. Alex managed to reach the office only by lunchtime. Jessica was sitting in her office, accompanied by a lawyer and the chief accountant. Everyone was busy with documents, and no one paid attention to him. "Can I know what's going on here?" Alex inquired. All three of them stopped working, lifting their heads. "Of course, I've decided to separate from you, take my 50%, and open my own firm, so that no one steals my money for their mistresses, and I can sleep peacefully without worrying about my future. Keep working," she addressed the lawyer, continuing to examine the documents spread out before her. "Maybe we should talk first. I invite you to my office. No one will disturb us there." Alex tried to speak calmly, although he was seething with anger inside. "Fine. Let's go talk. Continue," she addressed the others. "I'll be back soon." "What's this drama for? You don't know anything yet, and you've already started dividing the company. Do you realize that if we split, we'll both go bankrupt?" His eyes wandered, his voice trembling. He sat in his place, staring at Jessica as if trying to hammer into her head things they were not ready for. "Are you ready to go bankrupt? Think about our daughter at least. She's innocent. I promise you that this won't happen again. Alice will never appear in our lives again. I had to take this step, again, for our well-being. Alice helped us get a loan. Remember when we were starting? The difficulties we faced. No bank wanted to collaborate with us." Jessica interrupted him before he could finish. "Ah, Alice, finally. I learned her name. I only heard about her wonderful lover and never got a chance to get to know her better. Alex, Let's do without extra words. We'll split everything in half, get a divorce, and then each will go their own way. Jessica interrupted him, not letting him finish. During this time, he managed to come up with so many different excuses that he began to believe them himself. But Jessica had no intention of listening to him. As luck would have it, yesterday Alice's test showed 2 clear lines. She spent the whole evening messing with his head. In the morning, he even had to give her his car so she wouldn't bother him, and she went to see the doctor. If he knew what this would lead to, he would never have agreed to it. Doctor, this is some kind of mistake. The test showed 2 lines for me. I even felt a bit nauseous yesterday. I had a ravenous appetite. Alice spoke in a distressed voice, trying to persuade the doctor that it was some misunderstanding. Tests often make mistakes. I can't help you. I don't see any pregnancy at the moment, the gynecologist confidently said, scrutinizing the monitor and trying to examine something that wasn't there for the second time. I was hoping so much. I'm almost 30, and it's time for me to have a baby. But I can't seem to get pregnant. Alice continued to complain about her fate. She reached into her pocket for a tissue. Lately, she often used paper tissues, which had become her indispensable friend and helper. Previously, Alex used to alleviate her loneliness, and she devoted all her untapped love to him. However, lately, she noticed that Alex was behaving strangely, as if he were afraid of something. She had to take matters into her own hands because she valued the relationship and had no intention of letting go of her beloved. When she found out that she was finally pregnant, she thought she had caught luck by the tail. The whole evening, she called him, sent photos of the test, and even of her still flat belly. She immediately scheduled a doctor's appointment, demanding that they go to the clinic together. However, he had a business meeting scheduled for that time. It was evident that Alex didn't particularly share her joy. He tried to explain that he was married, and he already had a daughter. Under pressure, he eventually gave in and kindly allowed her to go to the doctor by herself in his car. In her mind, Alice already envisioned coming to Alex at work, caressing her slightly rounded belly, his wife crying, having a hysterical fit. Naturally, Alex choosing Alice. But things turned out differently. Alice left the doctor's office and texted Alex that he would soon become a father. Jessica, you understand that we can't do without each other. I admit I'm guilty, but if we split the business, it will be very tough for both of us. We might have to close everything and work elsewhere. Before dividing the business, think carefully, Alex desperately pleaded, presenting various arguments and examples from their family life. He just wanted his wife to reconsider. He tried to convey that he loves only her and can't imagine his future without his beloved girls. The affair on the side means nothing to him. Observing his wife's clear, coordinated actions, he realized that this was the end he had always feared so desperately. It couldn't go on like this, and he was ready to break up with Alice now, even though she was pregnant. Alex, if you've counted everything, consider that I've listened to you. I understand everything perfectly, but even for the sake of our joint business, I'm not ready to compromise. Jessica looked at him for a few minutes, trying to digest what was happening between them. Then, recalling, she said, "The chief accountant and the lawyer stay with me. I didn't lure them away. It's their decision." After these words, she left the office, leaving him alone with his thoughts. But Jessica was no longer concerned about his feelings. She had to think first about herself and her daughter, about the challenges they would face without male support. It would be tough, and they might even have to sell the business. But there was nothing she could do. Life sometimes presents new puzzles that are good brain exercises. Alex turned off the car, stepped out into the street. An unpleasant cold wind blew directly into his face. He quickly walked to the bar. He spotted David sitting alone at a table, sipping beer out of boredom. Alex waved dismissively, pulled out a chair, and with a silent nod, invited him to his table. Alex replayed their phone conversation in his mind several times. He couldn't understand anything. It seemed like they had already agreed on everything in advance, and they just needed to iron out some details. He placed high hopes on David. If everything went as planned, he might be able to reach Jessica, giving her a third of the order, as he wouldn't be able to handle it alone. Could be the first decisive step towards reconciliation. But the conversation didn't go as planned. Upon hearing from David that he would collaborate with Jessica and that they had already settled everything, Alex became furious. Having a few drinks to drown his sorrows, he headed towards Jessica. He opened the front door and, without turning on the lights, stealthily made his way to the marital bedroom. Jessica pretended to be asleep so convincingly that she almost fell asleep for real. With a strong male hand, he grabbed her by the hair, barely holding himself back from hitting her and smearing her against the wall. He raised his hand for a blow but, at the last moment, thought better of it and slammed his fist onto the mattress. "So, you decided to deceive me, you wretch. Making a deal with David behind my back. Do you know what that's called?" "Hands off," Jessica shouted, experiencing her husband's anger and aggression for the first time. "Do you think you're immortal? People get buried for such things." Alex lost control, yelling throughout the apartment. Alex dragged Jessica out of the bedroom by her hair. Everything happened in a matter of minutes. Jessica didn't even have time to recover, trying to grab his hand to loosen his grip and alleviate the unbearable pain. "Alex, stop it. Let go. What are you doing?" Jessica tried not to scream to avoid scaring their daughter, but Alex didn't hear her. The words of David resonated clearly in his mind, stating that he wouldn't collaborate with him. Without much thought, Alex opened the front door and threw Jessica into the hallway. "Alex, let me go. Don't do something you'll regret later." Barefoot, in a nightgown, Jessica tried to reach out to her husband. Alex slammed the door in front of her. Jessica tried to reason with him, knocking and calling, but no one intended to open. Having kicked his wife out into the corridor, Alex, fully dressed, collapsed onto the marital bed, automatically turning his head when the knocks and ringing at the door abruptly ceased. Suppressing the urge to go back and open the door, he closed his eyes for a few seconds. Desperately grabbing his head, thoughts exploded in his inflamed mind over the past few days. He wanted to brush them away, forget, and peacefully fall asleep. To wake up and forget about past failures, losses, and disappointments. To start believing in himself, in his abilities, and that everything would work out. With eyes widened in horror, Jessica stared at the closed door, trying to understand why this happened to her. Finding herself in the cold hallway, almost without clothes, barefoot, not knowing what to do next. Wiping away tears with her hand, Jessica tried to calm her shaken nerves. Her throat was dry. Asking to go back home was not an option. It was scary. Who knows what a drunk person might do? People say that if a husband hits once, he will repeat it multiple times. Taking a deep breath, Jessica called the neighbors. There were noises behind the door, but no one opened. Jessica called again. "Jessica, what happened?" Squinting from the light, the neighbor opened the front door. Glancing her up and down, he immediately realized that she didn't come for a casual visit. "Come on. Why barefoot? You're shivering. Where's Alex?" Out of shame, Jessica covered her face with her hands. She was trembling from the cold, or perhaps from nerves. Removing her hands from her face, she wiped away tears with her palms and spoke. "Please help. My husband kicked me out of the house. He came home drunk. Our child is still inside. He won't open, and I don't know what to do." Listening to her incoherent speech, the man frowned. For a few minutes, he just looked at her, silent and unresponsive, still not believing what was happening. "Come on. Why are you standing there?" He finally snapped out of it. "Wake up, Janet. Let her make you some hot tea. I'll go to your place. I'll try to talk to Alex." Janet, hearing the noise, threw on a robe and came out of the bedroom. Seeing her tearful neighbor, She sat her down in a chair and covered her with a blanket. Just 10 minutes later, a frightened Valerie rushed into the apartment. "Mom, why aren't you home? I woke up because someone was knocking on the door. I wanted to open it, but Dad didn't allow it. He said it was hooligans." Valerie, with scared eyes, approached her mother, hugged her, and rested her head on her shoulder. "Mom, let's go home. It's late. I want to sleep. Please, don't argue with Dad," she pleaded. The front door opened. A neighbor entered the apartment, followed by Alex. Jessica immediately turned away. It was painful and repulsive to look at the person who heartlessly dragged her by her hair. "Jessica, let's go home. I won't touch you anymore. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." Jessica didn't even turn her head. His voice seemed insincere and disgustingly unpleasant. She wanted to be rude, to express everything she thought about him. Now that the neighbors were aware of their relationship, she could say anything in front of them. No one would be surprised anymore. However, the faces of the neighbors reflected sadness, melancholy, and sorrow. It was evident that they were fed up with other people's family quarrels. They were tired and just wanted to sleep. The neighbor looked at Alex, trying to push him toward decisive actions. Alex handed Jessica his keys. "Don't worry. I don't have the keys. Go home. I'm sorry I couldn't control myself." Valerie took the keys from her father, casting a bewildered glance at her mother. Eyes half closed, she didn't delve into the details and didn't inquire why Dad was leaving. Alex left the apartment, took the elevator to the first floor, and pulled out his phone. He contemplated whom to call. Automatically, he dialed Alice's number, mentally blaming her for all his troubles. "Hello, Alex," she hoarsely answered. "Rejoice. My wife kicked me out. Now I have nothing. No home, no wife, no business. Are you happy for me?" He sarcastically remarked. "Darling, that's wonderful. Move in with me. You're paying for this apartment anyway. You have somewhere to go. I'm not coming to you. I'll go to my parents," Alex declared, and went to me. "I need your support now." "Alex, haven't you forgotten that you'll be a father soon?" Alice said offendedly. "Never. Because there will be nothing between us anymore. I've decided that," Alex said, ending the call and adding her number to the blacklist. Jessica took her daughter to school and returned home. Something needed to be done to radically change her life. Filing for divorce was the only option. There was no talk of forgiving her husband and preserving the family. Jessica took her phone and dialed the chief accountant's number. "Lydia, please remember when our company just started and we were applying for a loan. I remember there were significant difficulties." Jessica paused. "Of course, I remember. I prepared the documents." Alex just stamped and signed the necessary papers. Lydia replied. "Do you remember the girl who processed the documents? Alex told me she was a great help to you." Jessica asked. "I remember her very well. If my memory serves me right, her name is Alice." "Yes, exactly, Alice." Lydia provided a detailed description of the girl, explained where Jessica could find her, and offered her assistance, hoping that the girl would remember her and be willing to help again. Jessica thanked her kindly, explaining that she inquired for precautionary reasons. If the need arose, they would definitely turn to this girl for assistance. "Lydia, I'll be delayed today. I need to go and check the premises for our new office. If anything urgent comes up, I'll be reachable on the phone," Jessica said, pressing the disconnect button and leaving the apartment. First, she went to the lawyer recommended by a close friend to initiate the divorce proceedings. After the meeting with the lawyer, Jessica decided to stop by the bank. She spotted Alice immediately upon entering the bank branch. The girl had an unhappy expression while talking on the phone. She glanced at the papers spread on the table, nodded, answered, made notes. Taking a ticket, Jessica walked directly to her and ostentatiously sat down across from her. "Hello, Alice." Apparently, Jessica's expression was such that the girl nearly dropped the phone in surprise. However, she quickly tried to recover from her panic. looking around to assess what was happening and to take advantage of the situation if necessary. Why did you come to my workplace? Do you want to create a scandal and disgrace me? She whispered. Don't worry. I have no intention of quarreling with you. I won't disgrace you either. Work peacefully. No one will find out that you invaded my bed. I came to you for a different reason. You must be aware that my husband and I are getting divorced. I can delight you by saying that I've already filed the divorce papers. Alex left yesterday, left the keys, but didn't take his things. Jessica spoke with a smile on her face. Alice, on the other hand, looked as if she were about to jump up and leave her workplace immediately. Listening to Jessica, Alice squinted suspiciously, trying to decipher the true motives. She had no desire to get involved in a dispute. She also didn't want to divulge details about her relationship with Alex. I'm aware. Alex told me yesterday that he left home, she said skeptically. There you go. You're informed. It's wonderful when people trust each other. Jessica smirked. Alice's fidgety eyes troubled her. Something was off. But Jessica had no intention of delving into details. You see, he didn't take his things, and I don't want them lingering in the apartment. Perhaps you could provide your address, and I'll send them to you this evening. I promise never to show up in person. How does that sound to you? Jessica asked, observing the reaction of the woman who had come between her and Alex. Alice stared at Jessica for a while, contemplating the best course of action. Should she mention that Alex didn't come home last night? She had blocked his number, and he couldn't reach her. I'm not against it, of course, but I don't know how Alex will react to this, Alice said cautiously. We won't ask him. I'll send the things, and you can figure it out between yourselves, Jessica continued. Seeing Alice hesitate, contemplating her proposal, Jessica took a ballpoint pen in her hand. Her face showed a mix of surprise and doubt. Write down the address. I'll be home after 7. Just keep in mind, get some movers. Let them bring the things into the apartment. Alex may not be home today, and I'm not allowed to lift heavy things. I'm pregnant. Alice spoke with newfound confidence. She wrote the address on a piece of paper and handed it to Jessica. Perfect. Expected after 7, Jessica said, opening her purse, putting the note inside. She stood up, smirked, and, under Alice's watchful gaze, exited the bank. Today, Jessica didn't close her eyes, devising a plan for her new life. She needed to act quickly and calmly. The main thing was to show Alex that there was no turning back. Let him move in with his pregnant lover, his parents, or rent an apartment, anything he pleased. The crucial point was not to disturb them or make Valerie run around at night, hiding from neighbors. Meeting all the client's conditions, she would earn quite a sum. She would promptly pay him compensation for his share of the apartment. The apartment was bought on a mortgage, so the amount wouldn't be too large. Trying to push away thoughts of her dear husband's ugly deeds, Jessica couldn't understand Alex's behavior at all. Instead of trying to mend his mistakes and apologize, he chose to pick fights, concealing the fact that he would soon be a father again. Could such irrational behavior be ignored? No. He would face the consequences for each of his actions. Under normal circumstances, he could have compromised with him, let him earn a bit, and stabilize the shaky budget. But after everything Alex had done, he wouldn't get anything, to say the least. Alex sat in his office, with no rush anywhere. His head was spinning from the overwhelming problems. He worked mechanically, experiencing nervous exhaustion and anxiety about his future. Alex smiled dreamily, recalling how well he and Jessica worked together. While the number of orders might have been small, they were there. And now Jessica took a major order for herself, luring David to her side. And, of all days, Alice had to confuse his mind and, paradoxically, crash into his legal wife's car. He had to constantly restrain her impulsive temper, keep her close to prevent her from doing something foolish and reaching Jessica. Why did he ever get involved with her? His intuition warned him to stay away from this girl. It was time to end it, but Alice was so good at persuading, pleading tearfully to come back. He felt needed, loved, and once again worked where he was immensely welcome. He remembered coming to calm his neighbor down. He explained that if Jessica called the police, it would only make things worse. He felt ashamed of his weakness. He worked home angry but planned to talk. Explained that this wasn't how things should be done. He saw that she wasn't asleep, just pretending. She didn't want to talk because she knew exactly what the conversation would be about. Instead of spitting on everything, falling on his knees, giving her everything she wanted, the main thing was for her to forgive him, to confess his love once again. Alex clasped his head in his hands. A prolonged moan escaped his chest. He took his phone, dialed his wife's number. He was sure Jessica wouldn't answer. He listened to long, tedious rings for a while. He was about to end the call but heard his wife's displeased voice. "Hello, Jessica. Can I come for my things? I promise I'll never touch you again." He gathered all his will, trying to seize any opportunity to get home. To try to talk, explained that he was ashamed of his despicable actions. "I've sent all your things to Alice. Try not to show up at home until the divorce, because I'm genuinely afraid of you." Short beeps sounded in the receiver. Alex listened to the short beeps for a long time. He looked at his phone, trying to digest his wife's words, to control his emotions and bring himself to the necessary balance. Alex dialed Jessica's phone number again, but he couldn't bring himself to press the call button. What would he say to her? Start making accusations again? Ultimately, they would end up quarreling again. Of course, he wanted to ask why she deliberately provoked a scandal, openly showed her disrespect, spoke rudely. Although the answer was obvious, because he was to blame for everything, and as a result, he earned such treatment. Sad thoughts were interrupted for Alex by the ringing of his phone. The cheerful melody signaled that someone needed his attention. He glanced at the screen with a frown. The number was unfamiliar, so he could ignore it. Nevertheless, Alex answered. "Hello, Alex. It's Alice. Why did you block my number? I had to buy a second SIM card. Come over. We'll sort out your things together. It'll be hard for me to do it alone." She began in an offended tone. "I understand." He interrupted her, gazing into emptiness. "There's no need to sort anything out. I'll order a car now. Movers will come, and you'll give them my things. They'll take them to my parents." Alex spoke clearly, almost syllable by syllable, to make himself understood, and to prevent Alice from asking any additional questions. He was not in the mood for conversations, and communicating with her was starting to deteriorate rapidly. "Darling, won't you come? Don't you think you're acting unmanly? You know perfectly well that I'm in a delicate situation. I need your support now more than ever. What's holding you back? Your wife filed for divorce today, got rid of your things. We'll have a child soon. Finally, there are no more obstacles." Alice appealed to his conscience, trying to shame him, protect him from an impulsive act. A picture of Jessica tossing his things into bags, with a satisfied smirk on her face, sending them to Alice, flashed before Alex's eyes. She took pleasure in once again outsmarting her husband. "How did Jessica find out your address?" Alex hissed into the phone. "She came to my workplace today, asked for the address. I gave it to her. You wouldn't want to go to her for every t-shirt. Besides, you're getting divorced." "Did you tell Jessica about the pregnancy?" he asked anxiously. Alice sighed heavily. "Darling, why should I hide it? Do you want me to hide from people for 9 months? I'm a woman too. I want to be loved and cherished. Protect me," she said. "Who asked you?" he asked angrily. "Who asked me? I don't need anyone to ask me. I never hid anything from you. I immediately said that I dream of starting a family with you. No one will love you like I do. You know that yourself. So, come back, my dear. I won't give your things to anyone. Come by yourself. We have things to discuss." Alice fell silent. trying to find words that Alex had unquestioningly accepted not so long ago, believed in, found time for in his tight schedule, and rushed to her. Something had broken inside him now. Alice felt it, but she wasn't going to back down. No matter how many times Alex tried to break up, he couldn't resist her pressure. "Alex, I'm waiting for you. What would you like to eat, darling?" Silence hung in the receiver again. Alex frowned, realizing that the conversation needed to end. "Alice, movers will come. Take my things. I've said everything. Try to disobey me." Pressing the disconnect button, Alex casually dropped the handset. He decided not to bother now about how he would justify himself to his parents today. Seeing their surprised eyes after he started unpacking his things. "Mom, where are Dad's things?" Valerie opened the closet, carefully examining the empty shelves, trying to find any reminder of her father. Jessica sighed heavily. Like any woman facing the feeling of awkwardness and shame for being left, no matter the reason, as her husband chose another. He had hidden it for so long, and now, by a stroke of luck, she learned about his terrible secret. Understanding that their child was old enough to inevitably ask questions about where the father had gone, she would have to tell the truth. Lying would only make her daughter distrust her in the future. "Valerie, Daddy took his things." "Well, I packed Dad's things myself. He has another woman. He will never live with us again," Jessica explained. Valerie lowered her head, wiping away tears that had instantly welled up. "He doesn't love us anymore?" she asked with a sniffle, her tearful eyes fixed on Jessica. "Valerie, don't cry. Daddy loves you. He just stopped loving me. It happens with adults." She wanted to add that another child would soon be born, but she refrained. Let her daughter digest this information first. Hugging Jessica, Valerie wrapped her small arms around her waist. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine with us. We won't disappear." Jessica wiped tears from Valerie's cheeks and affectionately kissed her on the nose, trying to calm herself mentally, so as not to cry along with Valerie. She pressed her lips to her daughter's temple. "I know, Mom. It's just sad that Dad left us. Maybe he'll think it over and come back." Her eyes filled with resentment, her lips trembling, salty rivulets streaming down her cheeks. "No, sweetheart. We need to learn to live without Dad and rely only on ourselves," Jessica said, gently stroking Valerie's head. "Valerie, don't cry. I promise you, Dad will regret it. He'll have to answer for every tear shed because of his fault, for disrespecting those who loved and protected him." Her embrace tightened, and Valerie clung to Jessica as if seeking protection and comfort in her mother's words. She couldn't believe that her father had left them for a completely unfamiliar woman. "When you grow up, you'll understand me. Some actions are unforgivable." Jessica sighed heavily, still feeling guilty for having to explain someone else's actions to her daughter. "I hope you're doing the right thing, Mom," Valerie said disappointedly, trying to force a smile and not wanting to upset her mother, sensing that this decision was not easy for her. "Alex, can you explain to me what's going on? Did you and Jessica have a fight?" "Son, things happen in families. Why move out immediately? You should learn to negotiate with each other," his mom persisted. She never interfered in his family life, fully trusting Jessica. Although sometimes she didn't understand her, she tried not to meddle in what was not her business, believing that her son was lucky with his wife. The house was always clean, and Alex never complained about his wife. Their granddaughter studied well, and they rarely burdened him with their problems. Jessica filed for divorce. Alex mumbled, avoiding eye contact, hiding his eyes from shame. "What happened? Everything was fine with you. Just started to live. Opened a business. Live and be happy." Monica couldn't calm down. "Mom, it's very complicated. In short, I cheated on my wife. Jessica figured it out, threw me out of the house, filed for divorce." Alex briefly outlined the situation to talk about raising his hand to his wife, the pregnant mistress, The financial ruin, it disgusted him even thinking about it. He decided to hold back from telling his mother immediately. She wouldn't understand. She would only escalate the situation. With a heavy sigh, he continued, "I'll stay with you. We'll see how it goes from there. Hopefully, Jessica will cool down." "Alex, are you out of your mind? Where did the mistress come from? What were you lacking?" His mother's gaze held so much pain and judgment that Alex felt uneasy. "Mom, you don't plan for mistresses. It just happens unexpectedly. Then they quickly become a burden, and getting them off your back becomes increasingly difficult each day. Because one fine day, she announces that she's pregnant." "Your mistress is pregnant?" Monica asked after a moment of reflection, hoping that she had misheard or misunderstood her son. "Yes, I didn't expect this from you. Where is your pregnant mistress? Why haven't you moved in with her if it's so serious between you?" She asked indifferently, trying to figure out a situation she didn't fully understand. "I don't want to live with her. She's not my woman. I don't know why I went to her. I turned away from her in a moment. I should have broken up with her a long time ago. Kept delaying it. In the end, I lost my family." How easily and simply you see it all. You don't want to live with her. What about the child? You should have thought about it earlier. Jessica won't forgive you. Monica nodded decisively. Alex called Jessica's phone, but she didn't answer. He wanted to arrange to take Valerie for the weekend, spend time with her, go to an amusement center, eat ice cream, just talk to his daughter. He missed her laughter, the conversations that were age-appropriate, which sometimes left him at a loss for how to behave. A month had passed since Jessica rented an office for her business and started working independently. Alex understood that it was difficult for her too. He tried several times to talk, emphasizing that they were not strangers and, for the sake of their daughter, should find common ground. Even if they ended up getting divorced, which Alex feared the most and did his best to delay the legal process, they should try to maintain at least a friendly relationship. But Jessica refused to engage in any conversation. Unable to reach Jessica, Alex decided to call his classmate, Joseph, and invite him to a cafe. Maybe they could come up with something together to avoid complete bankruptcy. Joseph had his own window installation business, and Alex hoped he might share some valuable advice. "Joseph, hi. It's been a while since we talked. How about we meet somewhere tonight?" "Why not? It's been a while indeed. I heard from Jessica recently that you guys are getting a divorce." "You saw Jessica?" An unpleasant feeling pricked Alex as soon as he heard his wife's name. "Of course. Now we'll be working together. She got a big contract, but she can't handle it alone. She offered me a 30% share." Joseph continued speaking, but Alex had stopped listening. He closed his eyes and burst into laughter. Each word felt like a sharp slap to the face. It was unbearable to think that not only was he unloved, but now he was also hated. Until they completely destroy him, they won't calm down. "Alex, are you okay?" Hysterical laughter echoed through the phone. Thoughts raced through Joseph's mind, all leading to one conclusion: Alex still loved his wife and was deeply affected. Why did he even mention Jessica offering a partnership? Although Alex would have found out anyway. There were no secrets in this matter. "Everything's fine, Joseph. Don't mind me. I'm just laughing at myself. Jessica took this contract right from under my nose. I found the client, and she lured him to her side. Then, to get back at me, she brought you into the deal." Alex fell silent. Joseph felt a twinge of guilt because Alex was his friend. On the other hand, in business, there were no friends, everyone for themselves. "I didn't understand why Jessica didn't offer you a chance to earn." I asked her that question. She made it clear that if I didn't agree out of pure friendship, she would find someone else, but not you. I gathered that you have significant disagreements if Jessica is so adamant. "I get it. Don't worry. I don't hold anything against you. Good luck, and enjoy working with my wife." Alex cut the call. He no longer felt like meeting Joseph. There was no need to dwell on this topic. If he couldn't reach Jessica, let her work with Joseph, Alex smirked wryly. Putting the phone in his pocket, he headed towards the door. He sat in the car for about 30 minutes, just staring at the windshield, observing passers-by rushing to escape the cold wind. People hurried somewhere, wrapped their faces against the wind. Not long ago, he never had enough time. The second hand seemed to run in circles faster than usual. Now, time was abundant. Do what you want, how you want. No need to justify yourself to anyone or adapt to anyone. A familiar melody played, and Alex took out his ringing phone from his pocket. It was Alice calling. The number was unfamiliar, but Alex guessed she had gotten a new SIM card. "Hello," he answered. "Alex, what's going on? Why are you behaving so irresponsibly?" A hurt voice echoed through the phone. "I'm actually working," he calmly replied. After a couple of sentences, Alice transitioned to tears. She cried loudly on the phone, simultaneously scolding him for his indifference towards the mother of his future child. Alex barely waited for her to stop crying. "Are you done? I'll be there soon." "We need to talk," he muttered. "I'm at your parents' house," she quickly added before he hung up. "What are you doing there?" Alex inquired, still hoping that Alice was playing a prank on him. He had no intention of involving his parents in their disputes. "I'm having tea with your mom," she clarified, and Alex realized she wasn't joking. He hung up, thinking that Alice would go to great lengths to stay with him. While he avoided direct communication, she decided to involve his mother. Nevertheless, Alice was always persuasive. Even when he had no time, he managed to carve out a moment for her. Apparently, she possessed an exceptional gift of persuasion. As Alex wondered how he could endure these relationships for so long, Alex took out the keys to the apartment. In the hallway, he immediately spotted familiar women's shoes, undoubtedly belonging to Alice. He removed his shoes and, bypassing the bathroom, headed straight to the kitchen. Alice sat at the table, chatting amicably with his mother. She looked confident, a satisfied smirk on her lips that vanished as soon as she saw Alex. "What are you doing here?" he asked angrily, still not believing his eyes. "Alice has come to live with us. She has a negative rhesus factor, and doctors recommend giving birth," his displeased mother's voice explained. She attempted to briefly explain everything so that Alex wouldn't ask unnecessary questions. Monica clearly wasn't thrilled with this news. She stood up, looked at her son, desperately trying to silently express her negative emotions. "I think you two should talk privately. I won't bother you," she added. Alex nodded silently, and Alice smiled approvingly, attempting to make a good impression on her future mother-in-law. "I'm warning you. If you bring your things here, I'll throw them off the balcony. You've been warned," Alex said as soon as his mother left the kitchen, firmly closing the door behind her. "Alex, stop it. I'm not afraid of you, and you know it. We're having a baby together." Alice hesitated for a moment. She got so carried away that she began to believe in her non-existent pregnancy. Her eyes darted around, her palms sweaty, but in a few seconds, she managed to gather herself. "My lease agreement for the apartment ends tomorrow, so we're going to my place now. I've already packed everything. Why spend money on rent? Let's live with your mom. Once we get divorced, we'll buy our own apartment, do renovations, and move in right away before the baby is born." She spoke with a slightly trembling voice, as if not wanting to miss her chance for happiness and not wasting time on contemplation. "Get out of here. Remember, you'll never live here, never," Alex shouted, approaching her as closely as possible, clearly smelling the scent of tobacco. It was challenging for a non-smoker to hide this smell, especially when the entire wardrobe was saturated with the scent of cigarette smoke. Alice smoked, and Alex never liked it, but he didn't dwell on it too much. "What are you smoking?" he croaked, not believing his eyes. "Can a future mother smoke?" He continued, "Maybe you also drink. Or perhaps you're deceiving me about your pregnancy." Alex froze, scrutinizing her face with evident distrust. The decision came naturally. Tomorrow, we're going to the doctor together. And for now, leave so I don't have to see you. Alex gestured towards the exit. Alex stood silently, watching as Alice rushed out of the kitchen. He only relaxed when he heard the loud slam of the front door. Monica entered the kitchen, holding a basin of freshly laundered clothes. Without saying a word, she sighed heavily, shook her head, and walked past her son onto the balcony. Alex, come here, quickly, she called her son, attentively observing the street. Look, isn't that your pregnant fiancé smoking on the bench? Alex looked down. Alice was sitting on a bench near the entrance, crossing her legs, smoking, and talking on the phone. From the 7th floor, it was challenging to hear the entire conversation, only catching isolated words. However, the gist of the conversation was clear. Alice was looking for a doctor. Alex, dear, are you sure she's really pregnant? His mother asked delicately, trying not to offend her son. I hope not, Alex ironically remarked. We'll find out tomorrow. I think she's now deciding that too foolishly. She believes I'll go to her doctor. Tomorrow, I'll schedule her in a private clinic, and I'll go with her to the appointment to prevent her from doing anything behind my back. He turned away, trying not to look at Alice, but his eyes kept returning to the red jacket. Together with his mother, they observed as she declined the call, extinguished the cigarette, took out another from the pack, and dialed someone else's number. Monica had already hung the laundry, placed the empty basin on the windowsill, and looked down again. She stayed silent, not rushing to speak. Disappointment was clearly reflected on her face, bordering on fear and horror. She still didn't know where all this would lead, so she was preparing for the worst. Since morning, Alex started calling private clinics, scheduling an evening appointment. He deliberately didn't inform Alice, planning to pick her up after work and go to the appointment together. Strangely, Alice didn't call him all day, even though he had unlocked her phone in the morning. In the evening, Alex met Alice after work. Alex, where are we going? It's a surprise. The way Alex said it made Alice's heart involuntarily tighten. An unknown unease rolled through her body like a wave. She shook her head, trying to dispel negative thoughts, attempting to regain composure and focus on positive thoughts. Alex, please forgive me. I was really nervous yesterday and smoked. I'm so ashamed. I promise, I won't do it again for the sake of our baby's health. Alice pressed against his shoulder, trying to look into his face. We've arrived. Get out. Alex parked the car near the medical center, turned off the ignition, and silenced the car. Reading the sign, Alice turned away from the window, trying to pull herself together and concentrate. She observed Alex's actions out of the corner of her eye. Unhurriedly unfastening his seatbelt, he spoke. Our appointment is in 15 minutes. Hurry up, dear. We still need to check in at the reception. Enough sitting. Don't you want one of the best specialists to examine you? Let's do an ultrasound right away. Alice was silent. She didn't rush to get out of the car. Yesterday, she spent the whole evening trying to find a doctor who would confirm her pregnancy, but no one agreed to help. Going to the doctor with Alex made no sense. Alice had nothing left to do but confess everything. Alex, I'm not pregnant. I just ask you not to scold me. Listen to me. On that day when I called you, the test indeed showed 2 lines. But when I went to the doctor, the test turned out to be defective. I was very upset. And then the accident. I decided not to tell you anything. You know how much I love you. I never hid from you that I want to be your lawful wife. Alex, believe me, if you marry me, you will never regret it. And we will definitely have children together. Alice wanted to soften Alex, to convey to him how much she loves him and fears losing him. Alex listened attentively, not interrupting, as if trying to understand. You probably should realize that we are no longer a couple. Forget about me. Most importantly, Don't scare my relatives with your visits. My mom was shocked by you yesterday, calculating out loud how many cigarettes you smoked on the bench. Get out, you'll find your way home. I'm in a hurry. I want to visit my daughter. Haven't seen her for a long time and miss her a lot. Alex said each word coldly, not adding anything more. He unfastened her seatbelt, visibly showing that his patience was about to snap. He said nothing more, started the car. 5 minutes later, Alex, in a wonderful mood, was speeding towards the house associated with the happiest moments of his life. The closer he got, the stronger his heart pounded. It was unbearable to remember his disgusting behavior. He desperately wanted to see his beloved girls. Although he suspected he might not be allowed in, out of habit, he searched for his keys in his pocket. He sighed heavily, remembering they were taken away. He pressed the buzzer for his apartment. Yes, he heard Jessica's voice on the intercom. "Jessica, it's Alex. Can I come in?" Silence followed. "Please," he added. "Come in." Alex hurried to open the door, jumped into the elevator, and pressed the button for his floor. He rang the doorbell. Jessica stood before him in a home dress and slippers. Her hair was tied in a ponytail to keep it out of the way. She looked him up and down rudely. "May I come in?" "I missed you," Alex said. "If you have good intentions, then come in. Just so you know, if you raise your hand against me again, I won't let it slide. I don't want to talk to you about work. If you came to appeal to my conscience, it's useless. I left my conscience at the scene of the car accident, deciding to treat people as they deserve." "Jessica, it will never happen again," Alex interrupted. From the depths of the apartment, a child's surprised cry was heard. "Dad!" Valerie looked at her father incredulously, unsure how to behave. She shifted her gaze to Jessica. Seeing her mother's approving look, she hugged Alex with her little hands. Jessica stood aside, watching them and barely holding back tears. Without saying another word, she left them alone and disappeared into the kitchen. "Dad, let's go to Mom. We'll treat you to a delicious pie. Uncle Joseph came yesterday. He brought us a berry pie for tea." Valerie took his hand and confidently led him to the kitchen. Alex quickly took off his shoes, threw his jacket on a puff, and entered the kitchen with Valerie. He glanced guiltily at Jessica. She subtly nodded, allowing him to sit at the table. Seeing the pie on the table, Alex shuddered imperceptibly. The thought of having to eat it made him nauseous. There was a sudden queasiness, a lump in his throat, and discomfort when swallowing. "I can make you coffee," he heard his wife's mocking voice. Jessica always understood him with half a word, and even with a half glance. "If it's not too much trouble," Alex replied. And here is Alex sitting at the table. He holds a cup of freshly brewed coffee in his hands and glances at the berry pie. He felt the urge to ask about Joseph's visit yesterday, but he couldn't bring himself to broach that topic, deciding that, given everything he had done, he had no right to. Moreover, he knew his wife wouldn't feel the need to explain herself to him. At a certain moment, Alex even felt like he and Jessica were back together. There were no misunderstandings, betrayals, demeaning fights, or the division of shared property. "Dad, try the pie. It's so delicious." His daughter's voice distracted him from somber thoughts. "Thank you, sweetheart, but I'm not hungry. I should have stopped by the store myself, but I was in a hurry, afraid it would be too late. Didn't even think about it," Alex replied. Jessica sat across from them, silent. Alex was thankful that she didn't ask him anything. "Dad, will you go with us to the water park on Sunday? Uncle Joseph said he would take his son and us with Mom." "Come with us," Valerie chirped joyfully, while Alex tried to calm down. His daughter's words painfully stung him, and his left hand involuntarily clenched in anger. "Looks like you've become friends with Joseph." Unable to resist, he finally asked. Jessica broke into a smile, demonstratively took a big bite of the pie, well aware that it displeased Alex. She took a few sips of tea with milk. "And what did you expect? You have another woman. I'm a free woman now. Jessica squinted slightly, looking at him with undisguised irony. She wanted to continue but glanced at her daughter and decided to hold back. "Dad, did you really stop loving Mom? Mom said that we would now live separately with you. You have another wife." Valerie looked at her father expectantly, fearing she might upset him. But to her surprise, he just shook his head and smirked. He looked at his daughter in amazement, then slowly shifted his gaze to Jessica. With her arms crossed over her chest, she stared at him directly, just like Valerie, waiting for a detailed response. The memories of how he had treated her badly still bothered her. Pretending to be a loving husband while maintaining his affair. "No, Valerie, it's not true. I have no one else but you. I love Mom very much." Alex stumbled, noticing Jessica's scoff. She didn't believe a single word he said. And was it worth trusting someone who had betrayed her for 2 years? "Valerie, don't trust anyone. Go play in your room. Mom and I need to talk." His daughter sighed heavily. However, she nodded approvingly, got up from her chair, and obediently left without finishing her tea. "Jessica, why do you do this? Why do you tell our daughter such things? There's no need to mention another woman, especially since Alice and I broke up. I have no one. After that car accident, I never saw her again, blocked her number. As soon as everything came out, I turned away from her. I don't want to see or hear from her." Alex carefully chose his words, afraid of saying something wrong and unintentionally hurting Jessica. He hoped she would believe him and replace her anger with mercy. "Alex, enough with the lies. How much longer? Yesterday, Alice sent me a photo on WhatsApp of your mom having tea with jam together." She smirked. Listening to his false justifications about feelings became simply amusing. Jessica purposely didn't block Alice's phone number. "Jessica." Alex fell silent. He was furious. It was shameful to look his wife in the eyes. Why did his mom take pity and let Alice into the house? Who didn't miss the chance to take a selfie? Alex shook his head, ran his hands through his hair, and began to tell the story from the very beginning. How she had called him, how she deceived him. He described how he took her to the doctor today and then went straight to them, because he just had to see his beloved girls. Jessica listened attentively. At some point, she wanted to stop him, to explain that it's enough. It's over. It doesn't concern her anymore. Now each of them has their own path. Their marriage fell apart. Alex ruined everything himself, and now he wants her to believe him. "Alex, go home. If it's so important to you, I'll pretend to believe you. But the truth is, no one needs it anymore," she said without hiding her disgust, and continued, "Yes, I really enjoy working with Joseph. I'll go further. I like him as a man. Every day more and more. I find him interesting. Yesterday he came to me not just because. Now he has a big order for glazing balconies and lodges. We'll be working on this project together." Jessica understood perfectly well that her words were painful and harsh, but she had no intention of pitying him. She knew that things at the company were not going well. He had no orders. So, she tried to hit him harder with her words, making him understand the consequences of betraying someone close. "Congratulations. I'm happy for you," he barely managed to say, trying not to show his heart. "Really?" Jessica chuckled. Then, raising her eyebrows in surprise, she began to laugh. "Don't laugh. I genuinely am happy for you," Alex explained, ignoring her mockery, pretending that her words didn't affect him at all. In reality, he now simply hated Joseph. "In another month or two, I'll probably be selling my business. Nothing is working out for me. It was much more interesting working with you." Alex swallowed loudly. It was uncomfortable to complain, but since they were having a night of revelations, why not be brutally honest? "If I decide to sell the company, I'll offer it to you first. I don't want it to fall into someone else's hands. We've invested so much into it together," he continued, taking a sip of his now cold coffee. quickly glancing at his wife. I think in 2 months, I'll be able to buy it from you. I hope we can agree on the price, Jessica said thoughtfully, estimating her income and expenses in her mind. Alex just nodded, smiled faintly at something of his own, ran his hand through his hair again, and looked at Jessica with sadness. Sounds good. Will you hire me at work? He unexpectedly asked, looking straight into her eyes. I don't want to work for anyone else, but I'd gladly work for you. You won't get any special treatment. I'll treat you like everyone else. You know me. I'm a strict boss, Jessica replied. Jessica, will you really hire me? Alex looked at his wife. Jessica remained silent. She smirked unhappily, rubbed her forehead with her hand, trying to recall available job positions. She hoped he was joking. She would easily play along with his joke, but it seemed Alex was determined. Let's talk about it later. You haven't sold anything yet, and I haven't acquired anything. She avoided a direct answer, feeling discomfort from the conversation. Alex nodded approvingly, took out his phone from his jacket pocket. A few seconds later, Jessica's phone pinged with a message. Jessica, I transferred child support for Valerie. Jessica checked her phone. Indeed, the transfer had come through. Thank you. For some reason, Jessica felt awkward accepting money from him, knowing Alex's financial situation. But then, thinking about it, she decided that it was his direct responsibility. Once again, she wanted to remind him that he didn't have such problems before. No one controlled him. Alex used to calmly take the proceeds from the joint fund, part of which went to support his mistress. The heart-to-heart conversation dragged on. Jessica wished that Alex would leave sooner. It became tiresome to dwell on the same topic. Alex, it's already late. Valerie needs to sleep. She has to wake up early tomorrow. I think we've long since made our decisions. Tell me, what's going on with you and Joseph? Did you really say he appeals to you as a man? Jessica, Joseph is married. His wife recently gave birth to their second child. Oh, why do you care about their family? You feel sorry for someone else's wife, but you didn't spare your own. How attentive and sympathetic of you. Their kids have a dad who cared about us and our daughter. Where was your sympathy when you threw me out barefoot into the stairwell at night? I know I'm guilty. I know I hurt you deeply. Forgive me. I was just terribly jealous of you and Joseph. That's why I brought up his wife. I always feared you finding out about Alice. Think what you want. But for me, it was important to keep our family. Wonderful. She smirked in response. You were afraid, but still went to her. Well done. What was so enticing about her? Jessica looked at Alex again. Her face expressed a desire to crush him to powder, to trample him like an annoying bug. I don't even want to talk about her. I'm more concerned about your close friendship with Joseph, because I don't want you to make the same mistake. I don't want you to feel used. After all, he'll never leave his kids. Alex sighed heavily, realizing that the conversation didn't go well. Guiltily lowered his head, stood up from the chair, hesitated for a moment, as if questioning whether he did the right thing. Jessica also stood up. She didn't wait for Alex to take the first step. She immediately headed to the hallway, starting to unlock the front door. Valerie ran out of the room. Dad, are you leaving? Maybe you'll stay overnight with us today. She mumbled resentfully, staring at her father, ignoring Jessica's surprised expression. Another time, sweetheart. Today, Mom got mad at me. He squatted down, hugged, and kissed her on the cheek. Our court hearing is coming up soon. I want you to know, if you really want to divorce me, I'll agree. I'm strongly against it, but I'll do what you want. Let us be divorced by mutual agreement. Since I annoy you so much. Alex hoped that Jessica wouldn't rush, would appreciate his efforts. After all, he was willing to do anything for her and their daughter. That's fine. I hope you won't change your mind and take back your words, Jessica replied. Alex kept his word. Less than a month passed, and they walked out of the courtroom as complete strangers. A year went by. Alex still couldn't cope. Running a business on his own turned out to be beyond his abilities. Ironically, in the 3 months he managed to hold on, clients seemed to intentionally avoid him. People came, inquired, had measurements taken for free, and received necessary calculations. Despite enticing offers, giveaways, people left promising to think about it, disappeared, and never returned. Everything went completely opposite to what Alex had planned. 3 months later, Jessica bought his company. Just a few days after the property purchase, her father passed away. She had no time to run the business, funerals. Then her mother fell with high blood pressure. Jessica didn't know where to start. As much as she didn't want to hire her ex-husband, she had to, with the warning that there would be no special treatment. Alex was happy about it. Jessica moved her mother to her apartment. Visiting her every day was inconvenient. Fortunately, Alex didn't pressure her. They were divorced, but Jessica hadn't paid him for the apartment, although the amount wasn't very large. But first, she bought his company, then the funerals, collecting the necessary amount, one thing after another. Alex wasn't rushing her. He lived with his mother, made the initial mortgage payment, hoping that fate was dealing with them this way. Jessica had no one. If she had a new man, he would notice immediately. Alex kept a close eye on his ex-wife's life, understanding her mood and what was happening in her soul with just a glance. Alice would drink and immediately start calling Alex, complaining about her fate, crying, blaming him for ruining her life, saying that she dedicated the best years of her life to him, still loves him, waits, and hopes that Alex will reconsider and come back. Sometimes Alex simply didn't answer the phone. Sometimes, out of boredom, he engaged in conversation, but he had no intention of meeting Alice again. Remembering how hard he had to break free from that relationship, and how skillfully she manipulated him with sophisticated lies. Deep down, Alex still hoped that Jessica would look at his exemplary behavior, change her mind and take him back, especially now, when so many troubles had befallen her, and Alex was always there. He helped as much as he could. Jessica didn't refuse the help, and she was even grateful for Alex's sympathy. Today, Jessica's mother was feeling a little better. Jessica left her at home and went to work. After her father's death, she rarely appeared there. Alex handled all the questions. "Hello." Jessica answered the incoming call. It was David. After he helped her, extended a helping hand, signed a contract with her for a decent amount, and gave her an opportunity to earn, they remained on good terms. Jessica liked David. They would occasionally cross paths, but their relationship never went beyond friendship. Jessica always knew he had a family and children, and she had no intention of depriving his children of a father. "Hello, Jessica. Yesterday, I accidentally ran into your ex-husband. He told me that your mom is not well. If you want, I can arrange it. Let's admit your mom to the hospital. They'll take care of her there." "Thank you. That would be nice. Mom has been falling apart since my father's death." Jessica was pleased that David never forgot about her. Over the past year, he had helped her a couple of times with small orders. And now, once again, he extended a helping hand in a difficult moment. "Agreed. We can admit your mom tomorrow. How do you feel about that?" Jessica liked that David always spoke directly, without any evasive maneuvers. Concrete and strictly business. She was taken aback by the speed of it all. "I'll send you the coordinates of a good doctor right away. Call him, and you'll settle everything. He's already aware of the situation. Just mention your last name and say it's from me." David calmly continued, putting Jessica in an awkward position. Jessica tried to minimize her interactions with David because she could never understand what was going on in his mind. Sometimes she caught him looking at her thoughtfully. It seemed to her that he liked her, and that's why David always offered a helping hand. "The medical center is excellent. Give them a call. Don't delay it. I hope they'll help your mom." David quickly hung up before Jessica could even thank him. 5 minutes later, a message arrived. She immediately dialed the doctor's phone number and arranged a meeting. "Hello," Jessica greeted as she entered the office. A man in a white coat was sitting at the desk, attentively examining something on the monitor. Jessica even thought the doctor hadn't heard someone entering the room. "Hello, I'm Jessica," she repeated, more assertively this time. "Come in. Have a seat." The doctor finally tore his gaze from the monitor, slowly shifting his attention. Jessica involuntarily sank into the chair, vividly recalling that all too familiar face. A year ago, this young man had placed an order with them. One window was installed poorly. He came to Jessica several times, expressing his regret for choosing their company. In the end, they provided him with another new window. The collaboration left an unpleasant aftertaste. "Hello," Jessica stammered, hoping he wouldn't recognize her. She really didn't want to revisit that unpleasant incident and the scandal with him. "Hello. I never thought we'd meet again." He smiled. "I hope you don't have any more complaints about me." Jessica began to justify herself. "Everything's fine. Although we had to argue with you for a long time." "Well, sorry," the young man said, smiling again, reminding them once more that their work wasn't perfect. "Unfortunately, it happens. No one is immune to mistakes." Jessica was already regretting coming to the appointment. In her thoughts, she considered refusing the help and leaving the office as soon as possible. "My name is Martin. I'll be treating your mom, so don't rush to leave my office." Martin kept his word. He admitted his mom to the hospital. At first, he and Jessica communicated strictly over the phone and focused on business matters. Gradually, their relationship evolved unnoticed into a romance, and a love affair blossomed between them. Learning about this, Alex was furious. Thoughts of Jessica having a new man drove him insane. Alex had no intention of sitting still and waiting for his ex-wife to remarry. He planned to take action, although he wasn't sure how. He might even involve Alice in his plan. This experienced seductress could quickly discredit him in Jessica's eyes. However, Alex was certain that this romance wouldn't have a happy ending, even though he didn't show his concern externally. He tried to keep himself composed, smiled, shook hands with Martin, all the while plotting his revenge. Martin had been dating Jessica for 2 months. He liked everything about her. Martin got along well with Valerie. They quickly became friends, strangely finding common ground. However, he wondered how his mom would react to the news. Martin didn't know, but he assumed it would hit her hard. His mom wanted him to get married and give her a long-awaited grandchild. Barbara was very surprised when she retrieved a letter from the mailbox without any stamps or return address. Turning it over in her hands, she opened the envelope and began reading the neatly printed lines on the computer. Initially, she thought someone had simply made a mistake with the address. Then she thought someone was playing a prank on her. But the facts presented by the well-wisher in the letter spoke otherwise. Barbara rushed home, closed the door, and, trying to catch her breath and not go crazy from what she had read, sank onto a puff. She needed to talk to someone urgently, seek advice. She grabbed the phone and dialed her sister's number. "Margaret, you can't imagine what's happening. I don't know what to do. Martin is dating a woman." She began to convey the contents of the letter to her sister incoherently. "Barbara, that's a good thing. Martin should settle down already. It's time for him to stop being a bachelor. Almost all his classmates have children," Margaret said affectionately. Upon hearing her sister's words, Barbara snorted loudly. Involuntarily shedding a tear, she began to lament. "This woman has a child, 8 years old. She was married before. It's only been a year since her divorce. See how cunning she is, barely divorced, and she's already caught Martin. A businesswoman, works with windows. She's 2 years older than Martin." Silence fell on the line. Margaret shook her head several times, grinding what she had heard. The news was not exactly cheerful. "Why are you silent? We need to do something." I don't need someone else's grandchildren, Barbara insisted. Margaret, maybe you can talk to him. You're still a candidate of medical sciences. He listens to you. Barbara began to try to sway her sister to her side and enlist her support. Barbara, you're so upset. As if he already proposed to her. Martin is not such a fool as to marry a woman with a child. Margaret began to reason aloud. She felt sorry for her older sister. Barbara began to read the letter aloud. Listen, Margaret, I didn't notice it right away. The address and the name of her company are written here. Maybe I should go to her workplace. What do you think? Of course, you can go. But how will Martin react to this? Margaret didn't openly approve of visiting Jessica, but she also didn't see anything wrong with it. Perhaps, after talking to this girl, Barbara would change her opinion about her. No, Margaret, I won't leave it like this. Tomorrow I'll go to this lady's workplace. Let her not think that I'll give up my boy without a fight. Barbara cried again. Good luck, Margaret sighed. Just be more careful. Life slowly began to improve. After the hospital, Mom started feeling much better. Her appetite returned, as did her mood. Jessica spent more time at her workplace. Mom, packing her things, moved back home, especially since her daughter had a new boyfriend, and Mom really liked him. The mere thought of Jessica's chosen profession as a doctor warmed her heart. After being treated in the hospital, Mom gained even more respect for Martin. The relationship with Martin was progressing rapidly. It hadn't been 2 months, and he already occasionally stayed overnight at Jessica's place. Everything happening in her life right now, Jessica definitely liked. She found herself thinking that with someone like Martin, she would happily shape her future. Hello, a pleasant and well-groomed woman entered her office. She gave the impression of a sensible and thoughtful lady. Hello. Come in, Jessica said. Jessica was accustomed to customers coming to her, often some with gratitude, some with complaints about the quality of the work done. I'm Martin's mom. Jessica looked at the woman again. A sense of unease stirred in her chest. Her face revealed that the conversation would be long and not very pleasant. Looking her straight in the eyes, Jessica felt an unpleasant premonition that she tried to dismiss, but it lingered. Please, have a seat. As I understand, our conversation will be long and challenging. Jessica sighed, putting aside some documents. Your name is Jessica, right? She asked. Jessica silently nodded. My name is Barbara. I'm Martin's mother. Jessica, don't think I'm heartless or arrogantly behaving. No, I'm an ordinary woman, a mother who worries about her child. Jessica just sat at her desk, looking at her, trying to decipher the purpose of the unexpected guest's visit. Suddenly, Barbara felt uncomfortable in Jessica's presence. She felt out of place. But it was too late to retreat. She had hardly slept all night, rehearsing her speech, thinking about how best to explain her sudden appearance so that they would understand her as a mother who cares about her only son's future. You're probably aware that I'm a mother too. I have a daughter who is 8 years old. So you can speak frankly and to the point. I hope we'll understand each other. Jessica had no intention of hiding anything. She tried to speak briefly but clearly. Were you married? Barbara asked, surprised, just to keep the conversation going. Yes, I'm divorced. Jessica immediately guessed where she was heading. Martin had warned multiple times that his mom was a very complicated person, and getting along with her would be very difficult. Jessica, I can see that you're a good person. Barbara paused, not hearing words of approval. She continued, I absolutely don't want to offend you, but I would prefer my son not to be involved with such an experienced and mature woman, especially one who's divorced and raising such a grown-up daughter. Martin is still young. He will have his own children. Jessica remained silent. Perhaps, as a mother, she understood Barbara's perspective. However, at the moment, she had no idea how to handle the situation correctly. Justifying and defending herself seemed pointless. Barbara was determined, and trying to persuade her was futile. Barbara spoke calmly, decisively, without rudeness or aggression. She simply shared her thoughts. And if these words were not directed at her, Jessica might have even felt sympathy for this woman and pitied her. Jessica, think about my son. Martin is captivated by you. I understand that. You are an intelligent woman, especially since you've been married before. Barbara emphasized, I really want a granddaughter, but my own, with our blood running through her veins. She painfully struck Jessica's pride. Unable to control herself, she continued, to be honest, I wouldn't want a daughter-in-law like you. I'm sure your union won't last long, and I want Martin to marry once and for all. Barbara, I understand you. Indeed, your son and I have been together relatively recently. We have never discussed marriage. Jessica fell silent, trying to choose her words carefully. I don't intend to force my daughter on anyone. She will always be with me, as an inseparable whole. I have nothing to hide. I live honestly, not deceiving anyone. I just don't understand one thing. Why did you come to me? First and foremost, you should have talked to your son. And as I understand, you decided to talk to me first. Jessica stared directly at Barbara. She didn't know how to react to the negativity Barbara was throwing at her. And, most importantly, how Martin would perceive this visit. I decided to talk to you first. Believe me, I didn't come to you for no reason. I know everything about you. I was described in detail in this letter. Barbara pulled out an envelope, took out a sheet of paper, unfolded it, and handed it to Jessica. It seems I have acquired admirers. Jessica raised her eyes to Barbara, hoping she would reveal this dreadful secret. She didn't want to think badly of Alex, but logically, besides him, no one else would need this information. You better know. Maybe a husband or maybe another rejected admirer, Barbara said. In her dreams, Barbara imagined her daughter-in-law as young, modest, and obedient. She didn't see anything like that in Jessica. However, Barbara noted to herself that she definitely liked Jessica. She didn't throw a tantrum. Another person would have shown her the door a long time ago. But Jessica held herself well, gracefully. It was clear that the girl had excellent upbringing. This woman undoubtedly knew her worth and wouldn't bend for anyone. Jessica, please let Martin go. He's still so young. She decided not to back down. Barbara, if you haven't noticed, Martin has long since grown up. Again, I want to emphasize that I'm not holding on to him. Consider that I've heard you. Today, I will definitely talk to him. I hope I've answered all your questions. Jessica turned away and stared at the monitor. Perhaps it was abrupt, but continuing the conversation made no sense. Barbara had already exhausted her. I hope Martin won't find out about our conversation, Barbara said uncertainly. I have no secrets from Martin. Jessica sharply replied without taking her eyes off the monitor. Goodbye. Barbara said her farewell and hurried to the exit without waiting for a response. Is this your work? Jessica threw the letter onto the table. Alex, looking surprised, quickly scanned the text. Where did you get that idea? He scratched his forehead, continuing to scrutinize the sheet of paper. Alex, let's not deceive each other. I'm just curious. Why did you do this? It's a whole composition. You only missed out on my school years. All other figures are there. Jessica sat down on a chair. You know perfectly well why I did it. Resisting was useless. No, I don't know. Explain. Besides, I've told you repeatedly that we won't revisit the past. Even if I don't end up with Martin, I still won't come back to you. I hate deceitful people, and you know that well. I never thought you were capable of such a thing. You need to stay away from people like you. Jessica stood up, worked around the office, contemplating what to do next. How much can one forgive a person, endure, try to understand their perspective? And yet, he draws no conclusions and continues to scheme. Jessica approached the table, took a clean sheet of paper from the stack, and placed it in front of Alex. Write a resignation letter. I no longer need your services. We'll transfer your settlement today. I don't want to work with someone I don't trust, and I won't. Hopefully, you can find a position in another company. If they call for a reference, we'll provide a good one. I can't offer you anything else." Jessica spread her arms, shrugged, and continued, "Let's part peacefully, without scandals and mutual accusations. I'm willing to forgive you for the sake of our daughter, but that's it. We can't work together." Jessica expressed everything that tormented her soul after his despicable act. She stood for a moment, then left the office, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The interaction with Barbara had spoiled her mood to such an extent that, as a result of stress, she developed a headache. Jessica took a pill, but it didn't help. "Hello." Seeing that Martin was calling, Jessica initially hesitated to answer. Barbara's hurtful words were still echoing in her head, urging her to let go of her boy. But knowing that Martin wouldn't calm down unless she answered, she reluctantly picked up the phone. "Jessica, I'll be late today. Mom called. She says she's not feeling well. Don't worry, I'll come as soon as I sort things out with her." Martin always warned Jessica if he was running late. Silence reigned on the other end of the line. Jessica just remained silent. She fully understood that her mom had decided to act preemptively. "You really need to talk to your mom." She barely managed to articulate the words. "Jessica, what happened to your voice? Are you sick?" Martin asked, concerned. "Your mom came to my workplace." Jessica didn't want to discuss this over the phone, but she couldn't keep it from him. "How did she find out where you work?" "I don't understand anything. I hope my mom didn't come to offend you." "You can expect anything from my mom." Martin, usually calm and composed, was now genuinely upset. He least wanted his mom to interfere in his relationship with Jessica. "She will tell you everything herself." Our conversation was long, and frankly, not very pleasant. Jessica wanted to add that this couldn't go on, that Martin was an adult, and if his mom didn't understand that, she needed to explain it to her clearly. And if she continued to meddle, Jessica wouldn't reconcile with it. "Jessica, I'll be there soon." He quickly ended the call. Despite her resentment, Jessica was well aware that the final word would be Martin's. If he took his mom's side, she would have to acknowledge that these relationships had no future. It would be tough for her, but there was nothing she could do. Barbara made it clear that, by her criteria, Jessica was not suitable for Martin. "Mom, why did you go to Jessica's workplace?" Martin began to reprimand his mom without even closing the front door. He was so eager to hear a coherent answer that he forgot to inquire about her well-being. The conversation with Jessica had thrown him off track. Now he needed to find out what she had told his mom. "She already complained to you. I decided to get ahead of her." Barbara smirked, kissing her son on the cheek. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Better already," Barbara replied with a sigh. "You've completely forgotten that she's my mom. What did you like about her?" Barbara said with a hurt tone. She understood that her son was expecting explanations, looking at her expectantly, without a smile. For the first time in his life, she saw condemnation in his eyes. "Martin, how could you get involved like this? Couldn't you find a younger girl without children?" Barbara couldn't stop herself. The last thing she needed was for her son to raise someone else's child. "Mom, enough. If you don't stop now, we'll argue. Everything suits me. I strongly urge you not to meddle in my life." Martin stopped her, imagining how she was bad-mouthing Jessica. "Are you ready to adopt her daughter?" Barbara raised one eyebrow in surprise, not hiding her smirk. She was offended that her son didn't see anything wrong in it. "Enough, Mom. If you've told Jessica any nasty things, you'll have to take back your words and apologize. I won't let you offend Jessica, even if it's you. I hope I made myself clear. And remember, I've grown up a long time ago. Let me decide who to live with." Barbara lost her ability to speak. She looked at her son with genuine horror, and then an hysterical laugh broke from her lips. Barbara had always been proud of her son, how respectfully Martin treated her, never raising his voice. Now she had to apologize to a barely acquainted person. This would never happen. Son, stay with me today. Barbara made one last attempt. She didn't want to let him go to Jessica, afraid that she would entangle them even more, making it harder to separate them. Her son's behavior was completely out of her control. Mom, I have to apologize to Jessica for your behavior. I'm ashamed of you, Martin said. He had always considered himself a responsible and determined person. He was a loyal and reliable friend. His friends could always rely on him. He always knew what he wanted. Now he couldn't understand how his mom could treat him like this, truly embarrassing him in front of a woman who was far from indifferent to him. It seemed to Martin that Jessica simply had no flaws, and her daughter. He was sure that his mom would understand her. She would see that he was happy and would definitely accept her daughter. Over time, he would tell her everything. But his mom rushed ahead and decided to act as she saw fit. Looking at his mother's distressed face, he felt a sense of awkwardness. Of course, he shouldn't have talked to her like that. Did you forget for a moment that your son is a doctor? I can see perfectly well how you feel. I understand what you're trying to achieve. You're planning not to let me go anywhere so that the conversation with Jessica doesn't happen. Barbara couldn't deny it. From childhood, she taught her son not to lie, to speak only the truth. But now she had a very real reason to deviate from her principles, to lie, or at least distort reality. I'm really afraid to be alone. Can't you skip one evening and stay at your mother's house? Check my blood pressure, as you always did before. I feel like my pulse is just off the charts. Helplessness and resentment echoed in her voice. She wanted, by any means, to achieve understanding, to start a conversation, touch on the topic that her son consciously avoided. Fine. Let's measure the blood pressure now. Mom, but I warn you, I'll still go to Jessica. Don't you understand that I need to talk to her, to reassure her, explain that I'm already a grown man and can make decisions on my own? You put me in an awkward position in front of a girl who means a lot to me. Martin tried to speak confidently, carefully choosing his words. There was a lot he wanted to say, but he feared saying too much, so as not to really raise his mom's blood pressure. He had already made an effort to explain to her clearly that she was wrong, and no one would tolerate her actions. That's enough. Thank you. Barbara snorted in response. How haven't you found a companion with 3 children yet? She mumbled, making sure her son heard it. Mom, keep your opinion to yourself. There's no need to express premature conclusions out loud. I really like Jessica. Thank God she only has 1 child. But if she had 3 children, I think that wouldn't have stopped me. Everything is clear with you. Go. Don't bother measuring my blood pressure. Since some time ago, my opinion means nothing to you. She interrupted him. Just know, you'll stay with her only if you give up on me. Choose. Barbara sharply turned the key in the front door, opening it wide, unwilling to listen to him anymore. No matter what he said now, Barbara knew that her son needed saving, and no one would convince her otherwise. Mom, are you sure you're feeling okay? His son's voice came from behind, and his hand gripped her elbow, trying to turn her around to see her face. Barbara turned to her son, pulled her elbow from his tight fingers, and, ignoring the question, said, "Go away. You don't have to come to me anymore. I'll call you. Please think about your behavior. Try not to upset yourself. Anyway, the final word will be mine, and you'll have to accept my choice." Martin stepped over the threshold. Barbara immediately slammed the door, demonstratively locking it, and only being alone, she burst into tears. "Did you come? Did your mom let you go?" Jessica asked, opening the door, surprised. Nothing had changed. Despite Barbara's categorical objection, Martin still held her dear. Jessica eagerly awaited his return, constantly checking the time. Although she was sure that his mother would do everything possible to keep him with her today, resentment towards this woman still lingered. But Jessica tried to control herself and not succumb to her emotions, listening to the call of her heart and the voice of reason. Martin was not to blame for having such a compassionate mother. "Are you upset?" Martin whispered, casting her a guilty look, glancing around to ensure that no one could overhear their conversation. Jessica silently stepped aside, letting Martin into the apartment, rejoicing in her heart that he had still come. "Maybe Mom is right. As a mother, I understand her." Barbara rushed to justify Jessica. "No matter how hard you try, you can't be good enough for everyone. I'm sorry for her. I don't share her point of view, and no one will convince me otherwise. I need you. I knew my mom wouldn't like our union, but dating someone she approves of is just ridiculous. It will never happen. I want to be with you. I made it clear to my mom," Martin said seriously, carefully observing Jessica's distressed face and trying to lift her spirits a bit. "Martin, this is your mother's opinion. She's determined. Of course, it's unpleasant for me. According to her, I've latched onto you like a dead grip." Jessica abruptly stopped, continuing to scrutinize Martin, assessing the situation and wondering if it was worth continuing to talk about what deeply troubled her, but decided not to stop. "I want you to go home tonight and think it over, whether we should continue seeing each other. My mom's opinion can't be completely ignored either. You're still young," she suggested. "I've already thought about it," he interrupted. "If I had any doubt, I wouldn't be here now," Martin replied, not wasting a second, affectionately kissing her on the lips. "I'm not going anywhere," he said a little guiltily, kissing her again. This time the kiss was more insistent and deep. "And don't worry about Mom. I'll handle her. We have each other, that's the main thing. Everything else will learn. Achieve." "Margaret, what should I do?" Martin has become completely uncontrollable. Barbara, holding the phone to her ear with one hand, wiped away tears with a handkerchief. She just needed to express herself now. Unload. Complain about her child, for whom she had put an end to her personal life, deciding to devote herself to her son and her beloved work. After the divorce from her husband, Barbara no longer sought happiness in love, making the conclusion that all men are the same. "Barbara, you're like a little child. I feel like you're driving yourself to a heart attack. Why do you take everything so close to heart? Personally, I respect our nephew. He acted like a real man. Congratulations, little sister. You raised a good son, judging by your words. Dear sister, now I have to calmly give away my good son to goodness knows who. It's easy for you to say. Your children are married. Everything is fine with you. My nephews don't raise other people's children. You yourself said that Jessica has something you like, that she has many advantages. If Martin ignored you, it means she is not indifferent to him. Maybe you should support him and not interfere." Margaret sighed heavily, knowing well that her sister was not thrilled with her words. But on the other hand, no one else would tell her the truth except her. "In that case, you might lose your son. Use your head, sister. Please don't meddle with them. On the contrary, start communicating with Jessica. Take a closer look. You saw her only once, and you've already made conclusions. Maybe you'll like her. No one knows what tomorrow holds," Margaret continued, although she knew it was very difficult to persuade her stubborn sister. Barbara was so obstinate. She might keep silent but do everything her own way. Barbara herself understood that Margaret was saying the right things. If they didn't concern Barbara herself, she would have clapped her hands and applauded her sister. But she didn't want her boy to be raised by someone else. Maybe Margaret's words were indeed worth listening to. "Listen, Margaret, I still haven't figured out who wrote me that letter. This person had specific intentions. So, I have an ally who doesn't want Martin to be involved with this Jessica. Maybe it's her ex-husband or ex-lover. My intuition tells me I should look for the ex-husband. The letter mentioned that they worked together. I can call and find out this information. Barbara mused aloud while Margaret interrupted her again. Why do you need this? The last thing we need is for you to plot against your own son. Barbara, don't even think about it. Martin won't forgive you. Can you really do such things behind your son's back? Listen to me for once. Back off. I'm begging you. Margaret tried to reason with her sister, appealing to her conscience. But Barbara wasn't listening. She was on her own wavelength, going through the upcoming conversation in her head to get the ex-husband's phone number. Hello, Alex, greetings, Barbara said as she introduced herself. From the conversation, she realized that Alex was intrigued by the call. So, she got straight to the point. They arranged a personal meeting, explaining that it wasn't suitable for a phone conversation. Hello again, Alex. Barbara noted that Jessica's ex-husband was quite handsome, a bit taller than Martin, with beautiful gray eyes and tan skin. What more could she ask for? I'm listening. Yes, you're right. I wrote you that letter. I hoped to save the family. But then your son showed up. Alex chuckled, remembering how he immediately noticed changes in Jessica's behavior. Suspecting something was amiss, he kept an eye on her. It forced him to take appropriate measures. Do you want Jessica back? Barbara asked directly. Yes. I don't want my daughter to be raised by a stranger. Valerie has a biological father, and I'm willing to do anything for my child. Alex replied determinedly. Alex, I understand you very well. I also don't like the idea of your ex-wife burdening my son with her child. I apologize for being blunt. I understand that Valerie is your daughter, and perhaps I'm not expressing myself quite correctly. But that's how I see the situation. Barbara watched her interlocutor closely. Seeing interest in his eyes, she gained confidence and began expressing her conclusions without holding back. Do you have a specific proposal for me? I don't even know how to react to your words. The thing is, thanks to this letter, Jessica fired me. I didn't expect you to show her that letter. She figured me out right away. Now I'm unemployed. Alex spoke calmly. He was, of course, angry with Barbara, but at the moment, he saw her as an ally. Perhaps together they could come to an agreement, resolve the issues, and lead them to a separation. I'm sorry, Alex. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about you. My main goal was to convey to your ex-wife not to count on my son. Maybe we should have met with you much earlier. Barbara only now realized what an irreversible mistake she had made by showing Jessica's letter and betraying Alex. She definitely liked him. He gave the impression of a very sensible person. No big deal, reassured Alex. He took the menu in his hands, carefully scanned the list of dishes, and then looked up at Barbara, breaking away from his task. Do you have a specific proposal? He asked with interest. Not yet, but if we stick together, we can come up with something. In the end, we can find the most optimal solution to our problem. Responding to her interlocutor's question, Barbara followed Alex's example. She picked up the menu and began to carefully peruse it. Have you already made your choice? Barbara heard. Alex set the menu aside, gesturing to the waiter who stood near the bar, observing them for a while. Suddenly, a chair was pulled out next to Barbara. She looked up, managing only to chuckle and gaze at Alex in surprise, as if seeking protection from him. However, Alex maintained silence with a stoic expression. Next to the table stood Martin, holding Jessica's hand. Like a gallant cavalier, he pulled out a second chair. Jessica, take a seat. Martin pointed with his hand to the empty space next to Barbara, while he settled next to Alex. Mom, have you decided to follow in my footsteps and get yourself a young lover? Congratulations. Excellent choice. He sneered, settling in more comfortably. Alex felt like an ominous fate was hovering over him. He couldn't explain what was happening in any other way. How could he forget that this was Jessica's favorite cafe? They used to drop by here almost every week. They brewed delicious coffee here. Barbara was initially taken aback, but quickly regained her composure. Proudly straightening up, she turned her head to Jessica and calmly said, "And why does this surprise you so much?" "Yes, I invited Alex to the cafe. I wanted to inquire more about you, Jessica. I need to know who my son is dating." She decided not to expose her ally, shifting all responsibility onto herself. Alex could still be useful. Barbara had already betrayed him once, and she couldn't afford to do it again. "Jessica, why didn't you bring your daughter with you? She seems too young to leave home alone." "Alex, take note of this. I think Child Protective Services might be interested in this question." She turned away from Jessica, addressing Alex in such a calm tone that everyone present felt uneasy about her hints. "Barbara, don't you think you're being too presumptuous? If you're used to meddling in your son's relationships, it won't work with me. I've long grown up and don't let anyone invade my personal space. You're too self-assured, trying to outsmart me and pulling my ex-husband to your side. It's very foolish on your part, and yours too, Alex," Jessica retorted. Barbara felt as if she had been struck by something heavy, so intensely painful. It seemed like an attempt to show that no one feared her, that they didn't take her seriously. She opened her mouth to defend herself. Barbara gave Martin a reproachful look, but her son had no intention of defending her. He sat across from her, looking at his mother with a hint of disdain. "Valerie is with Grandma. It's Friday today. Jessica takes our granddaughter for the weekend. It's quite normal. Perhaps, Mom, you wouldn't understand with your attitude. You don't have grandchildren, and with that attitude, you might never have any," Martin said. Barbara abruptly stood up from her seat. She had no intention of listening to unfounded accusations from her son. Let them think what they wanted. Her son deliberately hit her where it hurt the most, deciding once again to remind them of what she had been dreaming of for several years. Upon hearing hurtful words directed at her, Barbara even forgot about Alex. She needed to leave the cafe as quickly as possible. Before taking a single step, she heard her son's voice again. "Mom, stop. We haven't finished our conversation. Where are you rushing to? I think I warned you that if you don't calm down, I'll declare war on you myself. How much longer will I be embarrassed by your behavior? And you, Alex, why are you siding with her?" Alex remained silent. He was genuinely ashamed now. Desiring to win back his wife, he had once again stooped to unimaginable lows. "Martin, aren't you taking too much on yourself? I don't think I have to explain myself to you. My business is where and with whom I date." "Alex, I hope you understand me," Jessica said, attempting to calm down, well aware that she didn't appear composed. But inside, a storm was raging. Jessica struggled to contain her emotions and suppress her inclination to cry, looking up at Martin as if demanding immediate support. "Barbara, I don't know if I should rejoice or disappoint you," Jessica sighed heavily. She didn't want to tell anyone, not even Martin. "Soon, you'll be a grandmother," Jessica said aloud, closing her eyes for a few seconds, mentally berating herself for once again losing control. Her ironclad composure had failed her. When she opened her eyes, she scanned their faces. All three stared at her, trying to digest what they had just heard. Upon hearing Jessica's words, Barbara was initially stunned. She slowly sank down, fidgeting uncomfortably in the chair, which now felt entirely unwelcoming. She surveyed everyone present once again. Alex was clearly in complete shock, continuing to glare at Martin with intense animosity. His hands involuntarily clenched into fists, and Barbara even thought she heard the gritting of his teeth. "Jessica, is this true?" Martin looked at her with a silent hope, still unable to believe what was happening. He hesitated to ask again, fearing to hear that she was just joking. "Yes, Martin, it's true," she exhaled in response and reiterated for emphasis. "I'm pregnant. I don't even understand how it happened. 2 days ago, A test confirmed my suspicion, and today I had a doctor's appointment. Jessica turned to Barbara, smiling when she saw her bewildered expression. Barbara, don't worry. I've already scheduled an abortion. I didn't want to tell anyone about it, not even Martin. She wanted to continue, but Martin interrupted her. Oh God. Finally, you heard my prayers. Thank you, my love. His happy face quickly changed. Try it. I'll inform every doctor in the city so that none of them agrees to your impulsive decision. This is my child, and I have a say too. Martin approached her, ready to lift her, but the limited space and other patrons got in the way. Martin, let me go, Jessica said petulantly, holding her skirt and glancing sideways at the other customers, not expecting such an enthusiastic reaction. Despite Barbara's displeased expression, Jessica remained in a serene and composed state. Seeing Martin rejoicing in the news, she joined in, oblivious to the surrounding onlookers. Martin gently placed Jessica on the floor and helped her settle into her chair. He sat across from her, unable to utter a word due to the overwhelming joy. His heart pounded in his chest. A pleasant thrill of excitement surged, growing and overflowing. Happiness simply overwhelmed Martin. All that mattered to him now was to prevent any changes and ensure Jessica didn't carry out her intended plan. He couldn't bait, and he would never forgive Jessica. Congratulations, Barbara dryly forced out, feeling confused and unsure how to react to the news. It was undoubtedly wonderful news. Barbara had long dreamed of having grandchildren, but hearing that she would soon be a grandmother left her bewildered. Her heart raced at a frantic pace, yearning for calm, while her son reveled and rejoiced like a child. She didn't know what to do with this news, whether to rejoice or cry. Tormented by conflicting thoughts, Barbara, unexpectedly to herself, leaned forward and hugged Jessica's shoulders. I'll be happy if you and Martin give me a grandson or granddaughter, she continued after a brief pause, trying not to look at Jessica. Really, I'll be happy. And now, excuse me, I need to go. Son, if it's not too much trouble, escort me to a taxi, she addressed her son. Apologizing once again, she headed towards the exit. Her legs weren't cooperating, but she tried to work steadily with her head held high. Martin looked at Jessica. He didn't want to leave her alone with her ex-husband. However, Jessica only nodded slightly in silent agreement. Martin courteously helped his mom put on her coat and button it up. As it turned out, she couldn't do it herself. The button wouldn't go through the loop, slipping from her fingers. How do you like the news? He asked, breaking the silence. He watched his mother, who was under the influence of stress and nervous tension. Everything had changed too quickly. Barbara didn't know what to say. She shrugged uncertainly, continuing to stand in one place, looking at her son. She mysteriously smiled and thought about something of her own. Do whatever you want. It's your life. Do you even care about my opinion? She raised an eyebrow. She chuckled, waved her hand. Mom, don't start. Please don't ruin my mood. I'll be a father soon, and you'll be a grandmother. Isn't that what you wanted? Martin gently shook her by the shoulders, bringing her back to awareness. I'm happy for you, son, truly happy. Congratulate Jessica for me again. Apologize for my behavior. Barbara sighed heavily. I didn't want this kind of wife for you, but life has its own way of arranging things. I hope we'll get along with her over time. She looked up at her son. Don't forget you have a mother. Visit sometimes. Just don't be offended. But for now, come alone. I need to get used to it. Barbara wiped away an uninvited tear. She turned away, wanting to continue her advice. As always, oh, Mom, turns out you're quite persistent. Understand, you'll have to accept my choice. Otherwise, he paused, seeing Barbara frown and raise her hand. I know you'll start scaring me that I won't see my grandchild. Nobody can forbid me that. Okay, go to your Jessica. She casually pushed him away and proudly raised her head, heading towards the approaching taxi. "Mom, I'll call you." He turned around. Martin waved his hand. Barbara shook her head in response. "I hope so," she replied shortly before closing the door. Martin hurried into the living room. As he approached the table, Alex spoke softer and softer, eventually switching to a whisper. Jessica just smiled with a tight, strained smile, trying not to provoke anyone or spoil the mood. "Jessica, everything okay?" Martin asked cautiously, sitting next to her and watching Alex. The latter continued to glare at him with undisguised hostility. "Everything's fine. Alex is leaving," Jessica emphasized, looking at Alex's displeased face, clearly indicating that their private conversation hadn't been very pleasant. Silence fell at the table. Alex hesitated. All his hopes collapsed, shattered into the tiniest shards. He still felt overwhelmed, cast aside. What hurt the most was that Martin was in the apartment, the one Jessica hadn't settled with him for yet, peacefully sleeping on the marital bed. "When are you planning to settle with me for the apartment?" he said coldly, deciding that enough was enough. There would be no more delays. He wouldn't bend to anyone anymore. Let them adjust to him now. "Alex, don't worry. I've gathered the necessary amount. I'll settle with you tomorrow," Jessica said, realizing that upon hearing such news, her ex would immediately remind her of his debt. Using his generosity was already making her uncomfortable. "Do you understand that the amount has changed? Now I'll be the one dictating the terms. You'll have to pay interest for using my money," Alex said, arching his eyebrow, trying to explain his conditions clearly. "And can I know what interest rate you gave me for the deferment?" Jessica tensed. She assumed that the news would elicit a mixed reaction from Alex, but she didn't expect such an outburst. Though she was to blame herself, she should have fought with her head when she presented everyone with the facts. Alex is currently unemployed, and he also needs to survive somehow. And here was an opportunity to both get revenge and earn some money. Alex took out his phone from his pocket, opened the calculator, and started calculating enthusiastically. Jessica and Martin exchanged glances. Feeling her anxiety, Martin squeezed her hand tighter. After finishing his calculations, Alex turned the phone screen and showed Jessica the figure. "Alex, this amount falls a bit short of the total cost of the apartment. Have a conscience. I understand that I'm to blame, but you shouldn't be so audacious." Jessica gasped when she saw the sum. "Jessica, I have some savings. If it's not enough, we can move to my place. It's a bit smaller than yours, but it's our own," Martin intervened, but Alex sharply cut him off. "You're not even asked. These are Jessica's and my affairs. Don't interfere." "Jessica, let him keep quiet. I can't control myself in his presence," Alex demonstratively addressed Jessica, ignoring Martin. "Alex, don't talk to me like that. I can't stand aside and be silent. Jessica's problems are my problems," Martin calmly replied, not even considering listening to Alex's words. Smiling, "Martin," Jessica rested her head on his shoulder. The feeling of protection and safety gradually returned. There was a man next to her whose presence made her feel calm and secure. Alex turned away from Martin, smirked, and muttered through his teeth, "I've said everything. I need the money tomorrow morning. The whole amount." He took a napkin, wiped his hands, casually threw it on the table, looked at Martin, then shifted his gaze to Jessica. "Hope you understood me." Jessica placed her hand on Martin's knee, gesturing silently for him not to interfere. Although she knew Martin wouldn't stay silent. "I accept your challenge, the figure you drew as well. But I'll make a small amendment. I'll deduct from this amount what you spent on your mistress over the past 2 years. The rented apartment can only cover so much. I'll calculate other expenses at my discretion. I'll do everything approximately, following your example." Jessica spoke calmly, with a strained smile, to convey to her ex-husband that no one was afraid of him. And if he wants war, he'll undoubtedly get it. Carefully listening to Jessica, Alex once again felt guilty. During the property division, his wife never mentioned the funds spent on Alice. After stating his demands, he was ready to leave, leaving them with an intriguing topic for contemplation. But Jessica didn't stay silent. She recalled every detail, agreed. He grumbled, not willing to back down. It hurt that Jessica couldn't forgive him for the relationship with Alice. "Enjoy your meal," he said with polite mockery, stood up, and without saying goodbye, worked towards the exit. Before leaving, he turned around, gave them another mocking look, and left the room. "Don't be upset. We'll find the money." Martin started comforting Jessica as soon as Alex was out of sight. "You shouldn't worry." A year passed. Jessica and Alex were able to reach a peaceful agreement. Jessica paid him back for the apartment. The next day, Alex behaved completely differently and even apologized for his behavior in the cafe. Jessica and Martin legalized their relationship, with only their closest relatives present at the registration. When the doctor at the ultrasound said they were having a son, Martin beamed with happiness, like a string of lights on a Christmas tree. Jessica admitted to him that she had dreamt of a son, as they already had a daughter. Jessica didn't want her husband to be present at the childbirth, but Martin didn't listen. And when he held his son for the first time with trembling hands, he held him like the most precious gift his wife had given him. "Oh my God, he's so handsome," everyone nearby heard. "Jessica, thank you for our son." He couldn't take his eyes off the baby, still not believing that he had finally become a father. Now they visit Barbara every weekend. It was challenging at first. Valerie is already a grown child with her own character. She has a dad and two grandmas who adore her. Initially, she didn't want to accept Martin's mom, but Barbara gradually, step by step, managed to approach the elder granddaughter. Not immediately, of course, but they started communicating little by little, acknowledging each other. If Barbara was dissatisfied with something, Valerie quickly put her in her place, explaining that Mom knows better. No need to interfere. Mom is younger and smarter. With a heavy sigh, Barbara agreed, well aware that if she goes against them, she will be left in proud solitude. Unfortunately, her son, in absolutely any matters, always took his wife's side. Alex found a job, paid off his mortgage, and moved into his apartment. Living alone became boring and lonely. He called Alice, intending to rekindle their relationship, but it turned out to be too late. Alice met a man at a restaurant. He's married, much older, but everything suits her. She didn't want to change anything, explaining that she found the love of her life. At work, Alex liked a girl, and he started showing signs of attention. They developed romantic feelings. Who knows, maybe he'll fall in love over time. But for now, he avoids discussions about marriage.